Hey guys, Jason with CD Customs. We're back on Super Service. We went ahead and took the engine and cab back off because we need to get our rear axle replaced now. The original motor had the e-brake on the transmission. So what's nice about our new axle is the e-brake is in the axle. So we'll also modify the handle to work with, because it's got a handle e-brake, to work with this axle. The axle that's in here is pretty much obsolete. It's hard to change, get different gear ratios. So that's the advantage of going with this. We did find out the difference is about ½ an inch in the width of these two axles. So it's not really going to affect us. Bolt pattern's exactly the same, and we'll be able to get modern brakes for this axle. Now, the diameter of the drum's also a lot different from what's coming off of this. So when we do our brakes, we're going to put a proportioning valve in line so we can adjust it so we don't end up just locking up our front brakes or just locking up our back brakes. We'll get that dialed in right. But first thing we're going to do, we're going to get the old axle out, and then we're going to take a look at what we need to do with our perches. So we'll get this thing jacked up, get the axle off, and we'll get the old springs off of our new axle so we can see what we're going to have to do. Okay, so we got the old axle out. We put the tires on the new axle, slide it up here to make sure, like double checking our widths, make sure it's what we measured out. And what we found is we are going to have, it's a ½ inch narrow on each side, which is our ½ inch. We're fine with that. The other problem we're running into is how narrow these springs are. The perches are a lot skinnier and hard to get. So we're going to cut these perches off this axle and then weld them onto this axle. So that's our next thing. We're going to get those perches off. We're going to take these shock mounts off because we're going to use the original shocks for the 46. And those shocks actually just mount to the U-bolt brackets, so we don't even have to do anything with that. We just got to get the old brackets off. So we're going to clean up our new axle, we're going to get the perches off, and then we'll show you how we're going to weld it up. All right, guys. So we got the new axle in place. Now the perches are not welded yet. We just put the U-bolts on. They're snug, not tight, so I could set the angle for my pinion. And I'm not going to tell you the angle, not because I like to keep secrets, because I don't want people arguing with me over what angle they think is right. So I'm just going to say the angle's what I want, and we're good to go. So now that they're snug and the axle's centered between the two leaf springs, I'm going to tack the perches into place. After they're tacked, I'll pull the axle back out and we'll weld the perches up real solid. And then we'll take it out for its last pressure wash, and we'll put the gloss coat on that really seals up the frame. And our frame will be done. The whole front end's ready to go. So it's just waiting on this rear axle. Like I said, this is out of a Ford Ranger. It's got 410 gears in it, which is perfect for what we're running. And she's ready to go. Okay, we're back in the shop after the pressure wash. You'll notice we did put the old Ford Ranger wheels back on because we're not worried about getting paint on those. We will, when we do the front end, we'll take the front tires off. We'll have the A-frame hold it up so we can get the hubs all painted and everything. But there's going to be overspray, and we don't want our nice new red wheels to get the overspray. Now the rear axle is in. We're going to put a little bit of the Zero Rust on it. It's all cleaned up. Now the Zero Rust, the paint that we used on the frame, you can use that as a final coat, but you wouldn't want to thin it as much as I do. I thin it so much because I'm going to put the final coat back on so it's nice and glossy and looks good. But by keeping it thin while I'm doing all my modifications for the engine, and obviously for the rear axle, whatever it is you're going to make, you can see that's our finished tranny mount where we dropped it down. But anyway, so keeping it thin, there's just a real light sealer on the metal, so it's real easy for me to clean it up and get good welds and not worry about trying to penetrate through paint and things like that. It just makes the whole process of modifications a lot easier. So I'm gonna get this thing hung up, get it painted, and we'll show you how it looks when it's done. Okay, so she's gloss black now. This is our final coat of paint. With any luck, we won't be painting it again. It actually turned out pretty nice. So our next step is we're waiting on some brake parts. Like I said, we want to make sure all the brakes are right before we start putting the engine back in. The wise man told me to make sure it stops before you make sure it goes. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make sure she stops right. And then when the brake parts come in, we'll get that done. The fuel tank did come in. It goes between these two rails here. So we'll drop the fuel tank in. The radiator shop did say it was in good shape. He was able to save it. So he lined the inside. So we'll get the brakes right. We'll drop the engine back in, and then we'll do our clutch. And we're doing that in that order because we want to make sure the new bracket we build for the master cylinder for the clutch doesn't interfere with the transmission right here. So it's going to be a little tight, but we'll get it done while the engine's in. Once the clutch and the brakes are good, the engine will be in, we'll be setting the cab back on for the last time. This project's gone pretty quick. I'm getting pretty excited about it. So, all right, guys, we'll get back to you when we got brake parts.